Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Anime Figure Archive. I'm Senpai and today we are taking a look at Proofs 2B from NieR Automata version 1.1a, which technically means this is from the anime. This is going to be a very special episode for a few reasons. For starters, Proof is a relatively new company. They don't have many figures that are out right now, but they do have many on pre-order. So this is the first time I'm going to be experiencing a Proof figure. Secondly, I don't own this figure. This was actually loaned to us by a friend who wants to help support the channel and wants to hear my opinion on it. So he's left it completely sealed and has given it to us today to take a look at. And lastly, 2B and I actually share a special connection. We have the same birthday. So with that, if you like detailed reviews of anime figures, be sure to subscribe. When we hit episode 25 of AFA, we are going to take a look at this 1/2.5 scale Kirino here in the background that Kohai bought for me as a present. To reiterate again, we are looking at 2B, who is an android, and her technical name is Yora number 2 Type B. This is a figure by Proof, and it is a 1/7 scale with an MSRP on AmiAmi of 24,948 yen. At the time of this video, she is still available, and if you like what you see by the end of it and want to purchase her, because it's 4 months after her release, there's a good chance that she'll go on sale soon. So here's a look at the box, and I do have dimensions in the corner. Then here's your first look at the figure itself, also with dimensions in the corner. Initial impressions right off the bat, this could have been a really good figure, but unfortunately it has arrived both defective and damaged. And since he's had this figure for a while, I'm not sure he's going to be able to RMA it. If we turn around and look at this, I'm just messing around with him. It's actually really good and arrived in perfect shape, but I hope that made his heart drop for a second. All jokes aside, this figure is actually really good, and I'll go ahead and tell you now, it is above average in every single category. I'm actually very impressed right off the bat. And really, its only flaw is that it's simply not as good as what they sold us in the prototype photos. But what's here is excellent. So let's go ahead and dive in and talk about it. Normally in these reviews, I follow the very linear structure of our rating scale. But in this case, with this figure, I'm actually going to jump around a bit. And because it's our first time seeing Proof and what they're capable of doing, I want to actually start off by showing it in a good light. I want you to see it standing on its own before I show you my issue with it. And my issue with it has to do with paint in comparison to the prototype photo. So I don't really want to start this on a bad note and then carry that throughout the video. I'd actually rather start this on a positive note and then end showing you what they were selling us, and then you can kind of make your judgment on how you want to proceed. I'm going to go ahead and start with artistry because there's a lot going on here, particularly if you're a fan of NieR Automata, and I want to talk about it. This will also help out for those of you that know about maybe 2B as a character, but don't fully know the lore yet behind her. Maybe you're purchasing her for your collection and eventually will get around to playing the games or watching the anime. For starters, we see 2B here, right, in her standard attire that we see in the anime. In this figure, we do get two faces. The default's going to be with her tactical visor on, or blindfold as we kind of colloquially call it, and we have one without. She's holding her standard issue katana called Virtuous Contract. Up top, we have a pod robot which is designed to assist these androids from everything from combat, data gathering, and just monitoring them. This one specifically is called 042. I've removed 2B to show you the sword that is in the back here. This is a two-handed sword that you can get in the game, and it's called Beast Lord. It is stabbed into the core or head of a standard machine, which is an enemy from the series. We don't know what enemy this comes from because this head is just a standard core that you'll see on many of the units in the game. You can see here it's interchangeable amongst different bodies. So they do a lot with this figure already. They didn't just give us a staircase for 2B to be on, they gave us a lot of elements from the series for fans to enjoy. And the overall layout here is good as well. It takes up a good amount of visual space. I do understand why they put the pod robot here. There's a lot of negative space right on this side, particularly because of the height of the sword. So artistically, the placement here is really good. I do wish they could have thought of something a little more clever than just a clear support pole. This is probably a controversial opinion, but whenever there's a support pole involved, you can't really hide it, even if it's clear. And I'm of the opinion that if it's not going to be virtually invisible, you might as well just make it seen. I'd almost rather it just be a very thin metal pole that takes up a little less visual space, but doesn't try to hide. And in this case, I have to wonder if they could have done something a little more clever to hide that pole or just to make it smaller. For example, they might have been able to come off the wrought iron here in some clever way, or have the robot holding the wrought iron, something to make it hover in this area without having to add a very thick pole. But I'd most certainly rather have Pod 042 here than not at all. Something else they've added for collectors, which I think is a nice touch, is that they give you a hand that's not holding the katana. So for some reason in your placement, this katana is too long to support, right? In the sense that this comes out quite far from the base and might collide with your display case or wherever you're putting it, you can just swap to an empty hand. And the funny thing is that this hand still has the mold for the piece that would go into the katana. But right off the bat, I think you can see that there's a lot going on here, and artistically, I think they've done a fantastic job of including elements in the game that make sense, right, that people are going to recognize, and put it in a way and manner that looks good. And because of that, for artistry, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. Next, we'll talk about base, and I'm going to remove 2B to do so. 2B is mounted with metal pegs, which is always the preferred method. Besides what's already here, one of the best parts about the base is that it's finished on the back side. So if it was displayed from an angle where you could see this other side, it's not going to look bad. They even went as far as detailing the stone. Beast Lord itself is also symmetrical, so you do see the whole other side to it. Absolutely every part of the base has multiple layers of shading and highlights, and it looks fantastic. And actually the back side of the stone is a really good place to showcase some of that. In just this corner alone, we can see examples of highlights, debris that they've got inside here. Up top here, we can see different tones that they use in the stone and even how they've kind of sponged in different textures. And even the edge of the stone looks good with this kind of properly highlighted chipped edge. This is another great angle to demonstrate a lot of the different highlights and tones they use in the stones, and has one of the only examples of excess flashing on the entire figure. But it's hidden by the core, so you'll never see it. Again, talking about the stones, as we move downward, they get dirtier and dirtier all the way down to the bottom here. Once again, texture looks fantastic, colors look appropriate. We can see the core here, and you can see the eyes modeled in, and we have additional shading around each element. Wrought iron fence even has rust detailing at the bottom. The top of the wrought iron fence has been hand brushed to give it some shine and weathering, but this is one of the few areas of the base that I actually don't like very much. The color they've chosen and then the sheen that they've given it just doesn't scream wrought iron to me. Wrought iron is normally very old and tends to be painted black. Normally you only see silver around maybe some pitting where the paint is flaking off, and then you'd see a lot more rust. So the silver weathering and kind of gunmetal gray just doesn't scream wrought iron to me. Let's move back to the Beast Lord sword. They've done a great job of giving it weathering and texture where it needs it. As you rotate, you can see the sheen on the edge of the sword on both sides, so that's a nice touch. Moving further up the blade, they've done a great job of even giving it pitting along the edge. And once again, as I turn, you can see that each blade edge kind of shining in the light. The guard looks really good. We do have a dark wash here, and we can even see that same highlighting technique that they used on the wrought iron fence. In this case, it does look very good. Then lastly, we have a different color for the pommel and this piece in the middle of the grip. Then at this point, it should be no surprise that 042 looks really good as well. Everything from line detail work here to a wash just to get into these holes. The copper here in the middle and on the sides do look really good, and the gunmetal looks appropriate. From this angle, we can see the sculpt and where all these copper tones go into. I do wish they had a dark wash here, as it would have looked just that much more amazing. They've even added appropriate detailing on this piece up here. As you can see, the base here is exceptional. From the paint, to the sculpt, to the artistic elements of adding in all the stuff from the game. This is an easy 5 out of 5. I've returned 2B to the base. Let's go ahead and talk about her sculpt and paint. Starting off with the hair, this is one of the few areas I have issue with. Sculpt-wise, what I think is here is actually adequate, but the paint is kind of laid on so thick in this area that it seems to be hiding a lot of those details. This is two-tone. They do have a darker gray shading underneath, and they've gone back over that with this lighter white over top. Her hair is more silvery white than gray, so what they really needed to add here was some white highlights to really bring these tones out. I think that would have also given a little more definition to the modeling. Then here's a look at the alternate face here. The eye decal is set nicely and looks clean, but I definitely like this face a lot less, and part of that is the stark detail and contrast with how good that eye looks versus kind of how muted and dull the surrounding hair looks. And at least with their tactical visor, they can kind of cheat that. Here's a quick look at the back of her head, but the best angle of her hair is definitely from the side. It's made of 2 pieces, so there's no elements added back in. They've also done a good job of hiding the seam from the front of her hair that detaches in the headband. This angle here gives us a decent amount to talk about. The lace area above her breast looks fine, albeit it's kind of toned down like it is in the anime. I dislike how noticeable this seam is in between the top half of her outfit and the bottom. It looks unnatural. And the smoothness of this area around her chest also feels unnatural. From this angle, we can start to see that they have airbrushed a lighter shade over top of the outfit to give it some depth. They started with this kind of flat black and have gone back with this kind of satin, ever so lighter gray, which has kind of rested heavily in some areas, right, and lesser in others to give it some depth. Because of that, though, some areas do end up lighter, such as the ruffles here, and I wish they went back in and actually gave it some darker detailing. And that's a theme that I wish they carried throughout this. Because everything is so dark on 2B, I feel like they needed to give us more contrast. And they could have done that if they kind of went back with maybe kind of like a wash to fill in some of these details, or intentionally just gave some areas a darker black paint to mimic shadows that we would see if she was full-sized. And unfortunately, because they haven't done that, this area feels very plasticky to me. Moving around the back, though, we do see a very strong sculpt. Everything we see here, kind of the waves and the movement of her outfit, is very believable. And they've gone so far as coming in and doing some recessed line work here to bring out these details, which is what we do see in the anime version of her. We move down to the bottom, the outlining of the detail of her dress, when you catch it in the right light, does look good, but otherwise it looks a little too dark. This is primarily where I have issue with this figure when it comes to the comparison of the prototype model, which I will show you towards the end of this. Once again, though, they are really relying on kind of shadows and such to give you some depth here. I do wish they would have given her darker areas, such as in the small of her back, and even accentuated kind of these areas in her skirt. And looking at the side, we have a lot to discuss. For her glove here, those white dots are very clean, as well as the line work right here. They've done a good job of selecting kind of this pearlescent paint for her sleeve. Looking at Virtuous Contract, overall, it does look really good. There's a lot of detail going on here. A lot of it had to be hand painted. Parts of the modeling do look a little muddy looking, particularly this area right here, as well as the cord wrap on the handle. The end of the pommel does look pretty good, but the tassel coming off of it looks cartoony, but this is how it would appear in the anime, so I'm okay with it. But going back to the cord wrap here, this is something I will show you as well in comparison to the prototype model. This is the best culture shot of 2B. We can see her leotard that's attached to her bodysuit up top. They've done a good job of sculpting her leg here, right? Because this one is extended. We've got a crease here under the butt cheek. And conversely, because this one is extended forward, right, that's softened all the way through. So we've done a good job of modeling this area. From this angle, we can also see the white inner lining of the skirt, and there is shading towards the edges. Below, you can see the tops of her stocking peeking out of her boots, and they've done a good job of making that look believable. Moving down to the boots themselves, the sculpt does look good, particularly where any of the creases would be found. And you can see that even though they're gloss black, they have gone back in and added lighter areas of shading. And the high gloss of the boots has done a good job of capturing natural highlights. At this point, you can see that this figure is really good, and we can go ahead and rate the rest of it. The sculpt on 2B is really good overall. I think there's some minor complaints, right, with the hair and maybe some of the areas on Virtuous Contract. But overall, it's excellent, and combine that with the sculpt of the base, this is an easy 5 out of 5 for me. Looking at the figure as a whole when it comes to the paint, the base, the sculpt, the artistry, all of this for only 25,000 yen, I think that's an excellent deal. There are plenty of figures in that 22, 24 range that only have the figure themselves and nothing more. I think this is a great value, particularly if you're a fan of the series, and so I'm willing to give it also a 5 out of 5. So with all that, what is my hesitation with the paint? What you see here is extremely good. Why am I not giving it a 5 out of 5? It's really only because of this. If you think this is good, the prototype photos were even better. I touched on this very briefly, but this figure in many areas lacks contrast. And as a whole, in presentation, it's very grayscale. And something to note here is we really don't have any deep blacks, when there's a ton of black in NieR Automata, particularly on 2B herself. I mentioned that her outfit looks very plasticky in certain areas. I mentioned that the outlining of her skirt is lighter than it should be, that the hair needs a little more contrast. And that's something that we get in the prototype photos. This is what I mean. In the prototype photos, everything has more contrast. And I will go back and forth and show you with the original figure. But something to note, kind of in general, is that the stone color is a little different. The prototype has more bluish hues to it. That does a good job of helping separate it from the sword, from the core, right, from the machine, from the pod robot, from even 2B herself. Then when it comes to her outfit in the prototype photos is actually more of a matte black, which it should be. It's cloth. And this area in particular is something I wanted to highlight. Look at how white and vibrant the outline work is on her skirt. Look at how close in tonality her dress is to her gloss boots. Here's another angle of that white outlining on the back. And here's what it looks like in the anime. To a degree, I think that the prototype is just a little too white and should be a tad more subtle, but it most certainly shouldn't be this. I mean, this comes off slightly bluish, right? It's so light. And although I wouldn't dock a point for this, even the sculpt is significantly better in the prototype, and some of that didn't come through on the final molds. Take a look here at the hilt of the katana. The definition you have in the cord wrap is significantly more than what we have in the final product. But given how good the rest of the sculpt is throughout the figure and how above average it is, I'm still going to keep that at 5 stars. And in the prototype photos, we see more definition in the hair, which is one of my biggest complaints about the figure. We've got more definition in the sculpt. We see somewhat of highlights, which needed to be hand painted in order to bring that out in real life. So we end up with this more gray toned hair versus her silvery white hair. And all it needed to get there was white highlights. That would have significantly lightened up the total tonality of the hair. So as good as the final version of this is, it's just really annoying that the prototype version is just that much better. And the prototype version solves the few issues I have with this. So it's annoying that they sold us right on that, and then gave us just a slightly lesser version of that throughout. And because of that, I have to give it a 4 out of 5 on paint. That might seem really nitpicky to some, but the differences between the prototype versions and the real versions is the worst part about our hobby. We buy things based on a prototype version and we never see the final image before buying. We have to hope that someone posts pictures of it because they saw it at like Wonderfest or some kind of event. There's almost no hobby I can think of where we do that. We literally commit to purchasing something based on what they show us. And Proof did a good job, I will give them that. They showed us a support poll of Pod 042. Most companies wouldn't even show that. They pretend like it didn't exist, and then we just show up with that in the final product. So Proof, you're doing really well. Like, I'm extremely impressed by this, especially in this day and age with all the competition we've got going on with kind of the Chinese figures. The Japanese figures don't seem to be doing too much. So Proof is starting to represent again for the Japanese companies. It's just a shame that, again, your prototype photos are just that much better. And at least if you had gotten the white outlining right that you did in the prototype photos, I probably wouldn't really have an issue here. I could have looked past the hair, right? I can look past some of the minor sculpt issues given how good overall it is. But it's annoying that in areas of the base where you have 3 different tones of shading, for most of 2B, there's only 2. It's like she missed highlights everywhere. And because of that, I just can't give it a perfect score. Overall, though, extremely impressed by Proof. It's not every day we see figures like this come through, and maybe to you this was a perfect, 5 stars all the way across figure. I just can't get past that last little star given how good the prototype looked. But now I'm super excited for Proof, and I could easily recommend them. Check out this comment in here, which might just be my first scale male figure. Overall, though, this is an excellent figure. I think it's a great first showing for Proof. We don't see figures like this come through very often, and when we do, they might have the price tag associated with it, right? So although it's very good, it might get 3 stars in value. Maybe sometimes the paint is really good, but artistically it's a little off in some areas. This just does such a good job all across the board. Again, it's just a shame that the prototype version is just that much better and really fixed all my final little issues with it. But I think this says it all. They've definitely earned the certification. And, oh, wait, 1 second. I need to adjust something. There we go, that feels more like it. Because officially on record, I hate this figure. It's terrible. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe. I'm Senpai. Take care.